All right, my friends, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a book you should read. I did a podcast on this. This is my man, Sherwin Newland, and he talks, this book is called The Doctor's Plague. And he talks about the story, the germs, childbed fever, and the strange story of Ignac Semmelweis. A wonderful book, man. I'm telling you, it's nuts what was going on back in the day. Let me just read you a couple of things. If you're wondering why I got this, man, I think I tore a rotator cuff or something to do. I was doing some bench press. Oh, I had a small pain going up, and then I said, I'll just do one more, and then a ripping pain. It hurts like heck. I texted my brother, he goes, dude, it never goes away either. So I don't know what that's about, but that's not good. All right, so let me just share with you this. And the point about this is you always got to be skeptic of everything. Be a skeptic on everything you read, because it's in here, it's nuts what's out there and what permeates society, and how the powers that be can just dwarf out the people say, no, that's not right, that's not right. And I hate to say it, but when it comes to retirement planning and other things, it's up to you to understand. So here's not the foreword, but there is a word of fear that I shall pronounce when I utter the name of puerperal fever, for there's almost no acute disease that is more terrible than this. There is something so touching in the death of a woman who has recently given birth to her child, something so mournful in the disappointment of cherished hopes, something so pitiful in the deserted condition of the newborn helpless creature, forever deprived of those tender cares and caresses that are necessary for it, that the hardest heart is sensible to the catastrophe. It is a source of desecration. That's from Charles Meigs, Professor Midwifery and the Diseases of Women and Children, Jefferson Medical College, 1851. Let me read you something else here. Oh man, it's crazy. Hold on just a second. Where was I just looking at? Hold on just a second, right here. Oh, I don't know where I was, man. It's too bad. I was going to read this to you. Some of the all right, so basically, I wish I could find it. Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, so basically what's going on is all these women were dying in childbirth, dying left and right. And the doctors of the day felt there's something in the women that's causing them to die. And they didn't know, though, because all these is throughout Europe. As to causes, there were, of course, many theories. One of the oldest, and to some physicians still the most persuasive, was the suppression of the free discharge of lochia, the fluid that emanates from the uterus after a normal delivery. Long before the nature of inflammation or infection was understood, the appearance of the fluid in pus inside the abdomen of a woman dead of childbed fever was deemed to be so similar to lochia that they're thought to originate in that source. According to this theory, lochia, prevented from their free egress through their uterine outlet, would stagnate, putrefy, and back up into the tissues of blood, causing pain, fever, and finally death. Some authorities believe that impurities of the blood accumulated during the 9 months of pregnancy, perhaps because of the enlarging uterus, pressed on the intestines to cause status of fecal matter, whose poisons were then absorbed in the veins. It's crazy. You just go through this book. It's sad because all these ladies were dying. I'm trying to find. They had one. Hold on just a second. The figures don't come. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Let's see. A particularly striking example of this, the death of the women given childbirth, can be found when statistics of maternal mortality from a facility that performed only outpatient deliveries are compared with those of lying in hospital. Thus, between 1831 and 1843, only 10 mothers per 10,000 died of puerperal fever when delivered at home by London's Royal Maternity Charity, while 600 per 10,000 died on the wards of the city's general lying-in hospital. The figures of the continent were no better. In the decades before and after the turn of the 19th century, mortality rates for home-delivered mothers there and in Britain averaged about 40 to 50 per 10,000, while large institutions were reporting figures that were perfectly appalling. At the London General Lying-in Hospital between 1833 and 1842, 587 women died per 10,000 births. At the Paris Maternity between 1830 and 1834, again, 547 died, with the highest annual rating being 880, a figure that will later be shown to be at least 17 times higher than that in homes in which the district of the hospital is located. So if you had your child in the Paris Maternity Hospital, you had 17 times more likelihood of your dying than if you had your child at home. These are hardly atypical figures, nor did Australia or America fare much better. The epidemics experienced in hospitals on those continents may have involved fewer cases and somewhat lesser mortality, but the New World obstetricians were just as confounded as they were by their counterparts in Europe. And there's a guy I just read, Charles Meigs. Anyway, the point was, at some point, they started saying, they said, what's causing all this? And that's where the case where Ignac Semmelweis says, there's something happening here in these hospitals. What is it? And what it was that they weren't washing their hands. I mean, it's literally that simple. They were not washing their hands. And so because of that, not washing their hands, if they could just encourage people to wash their hands and alleviate some of this, more women would live to see their kids. But Semmelweis was actually looked at as like a crazy man. And so he actually ended up in they institutionalized him. Now, he was, I think, a rabble-rouser, might have had some mental deficiencies in of himself, but they institutionalized him, and he actually died in this mental ward, I think in Vienna, something like that. But anyway, and all the powers that be said, Semmelweis, we don't want to hear your stuff. Again, he was kind of grating. He didn't do very good politicking. But still, they said, no, we know what we're doing. We're so strong and powerful. We are the authorities. And I just sit there and I shudder to think how many women could have survived if they just would have listened to Semmelweis saying, just wash your flipping hands. And the same thing happens too when you see like vaccines and whatnot. I mean, vaccines are good, don't get me wrong, but there's a causation in terms of just cleanliness that's helping us to maintain longer lives, just helping us. Not necessarily so much the drugs we inject in our body, but just cleaning yourself up or washing your hands. Sanitation, it's nuts. And it's crazy. So I hear all these things about, we can't challenge the consensus on all these different issues. I don't care what it is. All the issues, we can't challenge the consensus. The consensus back here was that the woman had something internal that was making them die while delivering. It wasn't the woman. It was the people, the midwives and the doctors who go in there and they go from one infected lady to another without washing up. And when the guy Semmelweis says, look, wash up, they ostracized them. Same thing with Ancel Keys. And I don't know if you know this, but the Eisenhower administration, Eisenhower had a heart attack in 1953. And his main doctor, his chief doctor, read something by Ancel Keys that says high cholesterol led to heart attacks. And so he got, basically, long story short, the government at that point then started saying eggs are bad, meat's bad, blah, 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 because of cholesterol. And Ancel Keys has a 7-nation study. And so the Eisenhower administration, his doctor, and Ancel Keys and his band of people went together and they just started basically just decimating the opposition. Anyone who opposed that was deemed to be not credible, against consensus, against the scientific community and whatnot. And we see this time and time again in all aspects of everything. Just the scientific consensus says one thing, and if you don't follow that scientific consensus, you're anti-science, you're a crazy man, you're a nut. And I don't, it's just sad. But the problem is how many people don't know the other side of it and then will do things, engaging activity that actually is quite harmful because they just don't know. They're just going off what the consensus is, and how many of the people who are, in this case, the doctors, the delivery wards, they don't know any better. They're just going off what the medical authorities at that time say. And now we look back in hindsight, we say, how did they not know about washing their hands? Well, they just didn't. I hate to say it, but now we're going to look 20 years from now and say, how did they not know about whatever we're talking about today? Cholesterol, all right, carbs, and things of that nature. It's actually pretty sad. So if you want to, it's a great story. It's sad. I mean, again, of all the women who died, it breaks your heart. No, it can't bad. I can't imagine. Especially if you think about like Europe, you read any Charles Dickens, whatnot, just the poverty-stricken people and the orphanages and whatnot. My wife's dad was in an orphanage when they first came over. I think he was born in New York. His dad was from Ireland. And he was raised his first couple of years in an orphanage because his mom couldn't afford him and his brother. And his brother was wet in the bed at that Catholic orphanage in the Bronx. And my wife's dad got his ribs kicked in, literally broken ribs, because he was supposed to police up his dad not to wet the bed. This is brutal stuff, and these are nuns. I mean, look, he forgive him. I mean, he did absolutely. He's a good Catholic man, absolutely good Christian. But I sit there and think, how many people do we lose because they didn't have a mom to cherish them and love them, and they became just minstrels, is that what it is, on the streets of London and whatnot, and Paris, because they had no adult authority or supervision? How many were abused simply due to not washing hands. And I mean, it is what it is. I don't blame anybody. Just it breaks your heart. And that's another reason why I think when you start educating yourself on various things, you start being more just appreciative of what you have. You start saying, man, I got it pretty good. I got it pretty good here in the United States. It's not perfect, never will be. Human beings aren't perfect. Only one was perfect, and it ain't us. But you just start saying, we got it pretty good here. And you start feeling a little bit appreciative of how good you have it. And even this is back in Europe. I mean, this isn't, you know, some third world freaking destitute country. This is Europe, man. Vienna, London, Paris. Anyway, so that's the story of Ignac Semmelweis. There's tons of stories, a couple things on the negatives, and there's also tons of stories on serendipity, where scientific discoveries are just found by just going after X, and all of a sudden Y jumps out. Oh, yeah, that hurts, man. I hope that goes away, because if I can't use my arm, that's going to be bad. Anyway, hope this helps. As always, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to get the book, I'll put the comments or the link in the show notes. It's a great read. A great read. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.